Hey guys, welcome to a new video discussion. I want to bring up a topic today that seems to be happening a lot in Hollywood right now, and that's film remakes and film reboots happening too early. I know that I've made a lot of videos in the past where I've complained about just reboots and remakes in general, but for today's video discussion, I really want to emphasize how making them too early can sometimes, disappoint people. It might, the box office numbers might go down because it's so early. So today I really want to have this discussion of why doing early remakes and early reboots can be a really bad thing, how they always end up really being bad, and how we've never really had a good version of this so far. This is going to be today's video discussion. So my first point today is by making a remake or a reboot so early to the point where we just nobody really wants it. Um, the problem with doing this, I think, is that the original film is still fresh in people's minds. A good example of this is look at the Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, that happened way too early. It only happened 5 years after the previous Spider-Man film happened, and only 10 years after the original Spider-Man film happened. And so it's still fresh in people's minds. By the time it came out, a lot of complaints were happening, including myself. And actually, over time, I found more flaws with it than even around the time I first saw it. And a lot of people seem to be having the same problem with it. And yeah, I think when a film is just so fresh in your mind, if it happened between 10, 15 years ago, anything beyond that is fine. But if it's between, if it's 15 years or earlier, that's usually a sign that it's way too early to remake it or way too early to reboot it, I think. Because, like I said, that original film is still fresh in people's minds, and overall, I think it could hurt that new film in the long run. And it just kind of comes off as corporate greed, if you really think about it. And it's really too bad because there's a lot of original stories out there that still have yet to be told, and it's really too bad that they use that money on a story that's been used 100 times before. And so, if it's still fresh in people's minds, more than likely rebooting it or remaking it really early on is not the greatest idea. My next point I want to make is it's hard to introduce a new approach on something since people expect certain things from the content already. Another good example, once again, I hate to bring up Amazing Spider Man again, but there's a lot of things about Spider Man that have existed for decades now, several decades. And, people have these expectations. There has to be certain elements of the content that still need to exist to make it count as Spider Man. And there's a lot of things the reboot did that made a lot of people mad, and including myself again, once again. Like I said, it's just so hard to introduce something new, have a different approach on something when there's so much already, content expectations that people are already going to have. And I think it's just really difficult, and it's just like I said, it's just not the greatest thing to do for a film that's remaking it or rebooting it so early, and people just really don't want it. They just don't want it to be remade or rebooted that early. Another complaint or another point I want to bring up, I should say, is for new approaches, um, having like a different size person or a different accent on somebody can always be a huge risk, or like a different gender or a different race on someone. Um, this is actually a TV show I want to bring up. Look at the show Elementary, for example. They used an ugly Sherlock Holmes, which is already a huge no no right there. They used an Asian actress as Watson, which is, I don't even know the reasoning behind that. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's good, I should say. And I mean, like, because I mean, really look at Sherlock Holmes. Think of what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had in mind. Sherlock Holmes was a young guy, you know, nothing later than middle age. He was a boxer. He, did um, uh, opium, things like that. And, even the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes shows with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, they even kept certain aspects of that original story. And, Watson obviously was not short and fat, but, I thought Jude Law at least had the voice and things like that. And even look at Sherlock, which a lot of people really like. Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman were great choices, and they both resemble something from the original content that really represent those characters. With Elementary, why is Sherlock Holmes so ugly, and seems a lot older than he needs to be, and why is Watson of a different race, of a different gender, absolutely has no reference or characteristics of what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle written down for that character. It felt like it was different just for the sake of being different, and it just did not work. And that's why I really don't like that Elementary show. It's just, there's just so many already established Sherlock Holmes storylines. Like I said, the original books, the Robert Downey Jr., Guy Ritchie ones, and then the already very successful Sherlock show. It's like, why add something to the additional canon? It's just like there's no reason behind it, and the way they're doing it is just not the right way to do it. And yeah, it's just when you have a different side, a different accent, or a different actor or actress, or a different race, a different person, and there's a lot of risks that happen, and it's just like, for example, I think Andrew Garfield is too skinny to be Spider-Man. That's just my personal opinion. I think he's a little too skinny for the role. Um, just there's so many risks that could be taken on new approaches, and once again, if it's so early on, people are just not going to want it. I mean, it's just so early from that previous version of something that just people just don't want it. It's that simple. People do not want it. And then my last point is it just doesn't feel fresh or original. I mean, really think about it. If it's remade or rebooted so early, there's just no sense of freshness and there's no sense of originality, and it really hurts it. And it's just a kind of a sad thing that the film industry and even the television industry is going to suffer from. It's just like there's so many original ideas, so many things that have yet to be turned into a film or a TV show that could be really good. And it's just like, we got to do Spider Man again because it makes money, or we got to do Sherlock Holmes again because that gets a lot of money, that gets a lot of viewers, or we got to do King Arthur. That's another thing that's going to be remade. It's 100 more times. It's like we got to do that again, and we got to do Hercules again, and we got to do this again, and we got to do this again. It's just like, when is somebody going to stand and be like, you know what? Here's something new. It's cool. It's has a huge audience already. The source material. There's a lot of fans behind it. Let's try this. Hasn't been done yet. A lot of people really like it, and let's give it a go. And quite honestly, I would like to see that happen more often than reboot, 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 remake, 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 reboot, reboot, reboot. And it's just like it's so early on. It's just it doesn't feel fresh or original anymore. It just really bothersome. So feel free to comment down below. Does that kind of bother you too? That a lot of this stuff is getting remade or rebooted so early on, and there's an approach to it that's just not very good, and it's just like I don't know. I really wish a lot of these executives did something more original more often because I would like to see that happen more often. So, what do you guys think? Is there some remakes and reboots that were done way too early? Like I said, 15 years or earlier. I think that's way too early to remake or reboot something. And yeah, like I said, feel free to comment down below. That's my take on the matter, and can't wait to see what you guys think. And hope you enjoyed this video discussion.